The loon to me is iconic Canadiana. When you hear the loon call, I mean, it just puts you into nature with a nice relaxing feeling.
I mean, the loon is sort of like the canary in the mine shaft as far as the lakes go.
And the loons at the top of the food chain would have 1,000,000 times higher concentrations of mercury.
We didn't have any young loons, so we decided that we'd try building this platform.
Hello, I'm Tom Murphy. Welcome to Land and Sea. The common loon is an iconic bird, one whose haunting call evokes a sense of solitude and peacefulness. But this icon's own peace has been disturbed. High levels of mercury in Nova Scotia lakes are causing unpredictable behavior, and that, over time, could lead to a loss of the loon. Every spring across Canada, thousands of loons migrate from coastal areas to freshwater lakes. These majestic seabirds are territorial, and adult loons typically return to the same lake and spot year after year to nest. Loon pairs raise their chicks in the summer months. Healthy loons are highly attentive parents, and for the first few months of their lives, chicks are completely dependent on them. For Canadians, the soul-stirring call of these fleeting visitors symbolizes the sacred wilderness. But in the mid-90s, the alarm bells rang. In southwestern Nova Scotia, the loon population was shrinking. Scientists traveled to Kejimkujik National Park National Historic Site to investigate. Wildlife toxicologist Neil Burgess was part of the original research team.
Hey Mike, ready to go?
So we went there, we caught loons at night. We'd go out in canoes, catch the birds. Take a small blood sample from them, and then we put bands, colored bands on their legs, so we could tell them apart when we saw them in the future.
Loons are predators at the top of the food chain. They nest on lakes that are large enough to supply them with an abundance of fish. In the summer, a family of loons can devour an astonishing 500 kilograms.
So if they're doing well and the reproduction is doing well and the birds are healthy, it means that every step underneath them in the food chain is also doing okay. So it's a really good, simple indicator if the loons are reproducing well in the lakes and if their population numbers are stable, that those lakes are fairly healthy.
But in southwestern Nova Scotia, the research revealed that the loons were not healthy.
It turned out the mercury levels in some of the birds at Kejimkujik were higher than anywhere else in North America.
Many sources, such as coal-burning power plants, contribute to mercury air pollution. Pollution travels across oceans and continents. It spends months in the atmosphere before landing on the Earth's surface. In the Kejimkujik area, mercury pollution comes from every country in the world.
And we realized the lakes at Keji, some of them at least, were very acid. And there's a bacteria that lives in the mud that changes the mercury that comes in from soil and from the atmosphere to methyl mercury, which is really toxic. And that's the kind of mercury that causes problems. And we found a really tight relationship between how acid each lake was and the level of mercury in the loons and the fish. The more acid the lake, the higher the mercury level.
With shallow, dark lakes, known locally as Mersey tea, and bedrock that has trouble neutralizing the acidity in rainwater, this sensitive ecosystem creates a perfect brew for acidic lakes and the production of methyl mercury. Methyl mercury is one of the most toxic substances in nature, and it is unseen, meaning a lake may look pristine, but it could be highly contaminated.
When methylmercury gets into the lake water, it's absorbed by, the little tiny plants, and then they get eaten by something, and they get eaten by something else. And there's all these steps up the food chain until you get to the small fish, the larger fish, and then the loons. Each step up that food chain, the mercury concentrations are going up about 5 times. Lake water would have one concentration of mercury in it, and the loons at the top of the food chain would have 1,000,000 times higher concentrations of mercury. So it was just whopping biomagnification.
As methylmercury gradually builds up in the loons, they can begin to behave uncharacteristically and erratic.
Mercury affects the nervous system primarily, so the brain and motor function and behavior. That's the big thing that affects them.
They are slower and can appear disoriented, swimming far from their nests, leaving their eggs vulnerable to predators.
So a lot of the loons with really high mercury levels wouldn't even start a nest. Or if they did start a nest, then the mercury affected the embryos growing in the eggs and killed them, and the eggs didn't hatch very well. And if they did manage to get a chick on the really acid lakes, the chicks never survived. So mercury was bad all around.
Canadian loons reproduce slowly and average 1 chick every 2 years. Kejimkujik loons average just 1 chick every 4 years.
So the birds with really high mercury were producing very few young loons every summer. So it was affecting the reproduction.
With a survival rate of only half the chicks as the North American average, loons in southwestern Nova Scotia are not nurturing enough young to keep their population stable. Coming up, an ingenious plan to help this symbol of the wilderness multiply.
Excellent.
Nova Scotia has an abundance of freshwater lakes, and in the spring, shortly after the ice on the lake melts, the common loon arrives. But the loon is in trouble. Mercury levels in the loon are higher in southwestern Nova Scotia than anywhere else in North America. The alarming levels of toxins in their bodies changes the loon's behavior. Most noticeably, they don't tend to their chicks as well. Defenseless without their parents to protect them, the chicks often don't survive. A few kilometers from Kejimkujik National Park National Historic Site in Queens County, Mersey-Tobiatic Research Institute, MTRI, became involved in the loon's plight. Ecologist Amanda Lavers is the executive director.
In my opinion, it's even more important to study species for which there's some threat, but it's not already too late. So this is a great chance with common loon that we try and turn around the trend and help loons out before they get to that stage of being on an endangered species list.
In 2007, MTRI started the Loon Research and Monitoring Program. They survey 35 lakes in the region. Their goal? To protect and better understand the behavior of loons.
So in a healthy environment, you'd have on any lake that's big enough to support enough fish for a family of loons, and you'd have 2 loons that would arrive in April, and they would build their nest, lay 2 eggs, and raise their chicks over the course of June, July, and August. There's been a lot of research in Kejimkujik because that is the place where we found the highest blood mercury levels. So the work that the Mersey-Tobiatic Research Institute has done in the last 10 years has been a continuation of that, and we've continued to document that the reproductive rates of loons are really low in this area, lower than anywhere in North America.
Okay, see what we can see here today.
MTRI also organizes loon watchers to collect data on loons for the Canadian Lakes Loon Survey, a national program run by Bird Studies Canada.
We help to coordinate about 60 different volunteers on 60 different lakes.
Fancy Lake is located in Lunenburg County on Nova Scotia's south shore. It is here where loon watchers Greg McNally and Greg Krause, known to the loon watching community as the Gregs, observe the daily life of the common loon.
I got into loon watching as a backyard amateurist loon watcher. When we moved here, I just wanted to keep an eye out what was out there for flora and fauna of the area. And then when my neighbor Greg moved in, he was more the professional side of loon watching, so we got together and started developing a real interest in the local loon population.
Well, from my place right here in the lake, I can watch our one pair on this lake, but in the other part of the Fancy Lake, I take my boat or kayak and go over about once a week just to see how many are there, and towards the end of June, just watch to see if they have any young. And also watch, just observe them and watch for predators that they may encounter.
Loons build their nests in areas that are sheltered from the wind and safe from predators. With thick, heavy bones, loons are well adapted to the aquatic environment. They are tremendous divers and swimmers, but their short legs, set far back on their heavy bodies, make them slow on land.
They are usually as close as they can get to the water's edge because they're really awkward when they're walking on land, and if they can nest close to the edge, they can just slip on and off the nest more easily.
Because their nests are close to the water's edge, if the water level changes, the nests flood and their eggs float away. At Fancy Lake, heavy rains in the spring months can quickly raise the water levels by 5 to 15 centimeters.
So we decided that we'd try building this platform so that they could nest on it. And as the lake rises and falls, well, the platform rises and falls with the lake, and so the nest remains dry.
Though artificial, the loons now have safer habitat to nest and lay eggs.
It's made out of PVC piping, 5 foot by 5 foot, with some wooden straps across the top for support. And on top of that, we laid plastic fencing material so that the nest wouldn't fall through.
We tow it up in the spring before the arrowhead and everything grow up, and then as soon as the little ones hatch, I bring it back down, and Greg brings it back down to get it out of the water, because they don't go back to the platform once they hatch. And the first year, we actually put nesting material on them to help them out, because loons tend to be a little bit on the lazy side when it comes to our pair anyway, when it comes to making the nest. And I just found out today it's the male part that, the male loon that builds the nest, so not very good for the guys.
At Tupper Lake in Queens County, the MTRI team works with loon watchers to make and launch artificial nesting platforms.
We want to go beyond the research and start to implement some measures that will help their reproductive success. A few years ago, we tried making wooden nesting platforms.
The giant wood tick.
But with the local wood that we were using, they got really waterlogged and they sunk. So we learned from the Gregs that using PVC was a much easier thing to do. So it's easier to build them faster, and they float really well, and it's easier to use them from year to year. We're hoping to put out between 6 and 8 platforms this summer, and if we're as successful as they've been on Fancy Lake, then we'll certainly consider trying to double that number next year.
Using the platform was a learning experience for the Gregs as well. They set their platform where their loon pair normally build their nest. The first year, the loons were leery of it and built their nest on the opposite side of the lake. But now it's their popular nesting spot.
So in the last 3 years, we've had success with baby loons.
The eggs are incubated for about 29 days. Both parents take turns sitting on the nest, While one parent incubates, the other finds food.
It's easy. It's not a lot of work, and more people should really consider building loon platforms.
While the Greggs are now eager to spread the word, at first they were not going to build the loon platform.
We both had reservations about tinkering with nature, but at the same time, we knew that the loon population here wasn't surviving very well.
Mankind has done enough to mess things up for the loons with, with the acid rain of Mercury, that maybe we're just part of nature. We can put out a platform to help out. Yeah. And they're just a beautiful animal. Yes, yeah.
Coming up, will the Greggs nesting platform be successful for a 4th year in a row? Loons in southwestern Nova Scotia have struggled to keep their population stable. Their nervous systems are gradually damaged by accumulations of toxic methyl mercury, making it hard for them to reproduce. For over 2 decades, scientists and researchers have focused on the Kejimkujik area to better understand why mercury levels are so high. As a result of that and other environmental work, Canada signed an international treaty to reduce mercury air pollution.
We've made a lot of great strides to reduce acid precipitation through government regulation and industry really cleaning up their smokestacks.
Mercury pollution from Canadian sources has dropped by 90%.
But it's going to take a long time for the natural environment to recover. So we're still not seeing recovery in our aquatic ecosystems that we'd like.
We know that mercury is having an impact on the loons at Keji. So my question now is, what trend is there to the mercury levels?
Mercury pollution is a complicated and global problem, and it's on the rise in countries with an increased reliance on coal-burning power plants.
So what concerns me now is, are things getting worse and worse down at Keji for loons in terms of mercury pollution? I don't have an explanation for why the mercury levels are increasing. That's going to take some more scientific work. My suspicion might be that climate change and warming lake water that would favor those bacteria that produce the methylmercury, that might be one possible mechanism that's going on. But climate change is affecting a lot of things with pollution, and we don't have a great handle on it. So we need to do some more work and figure that one out.
While global solutions are necessary, Neil Burgess remains optimistic. There are many things that can be done on the local level.
Batteries contain a fair bit of mercury, so it's really important that you don't throw batteries out where they're going to be incinerated with garbage. The other thing is being careful with the compact fluorescent light bulbs. So getting them back to a recycling depot is important. And then just electrical conservation, like not wasting electricity.
Beyond the struggles of mercury, loons still have to deal with natural predators, but loon parents go to great lengths to defend their young. When they sense a threat, they call to each other to lure the predator away. They will charge at boaters and display unusual behavior. While they dance in the air, hawks and eagles get distracted, giving the other parent time to hide their chicks. Back on Fancy Lake in South Shore, Nova Scotia, only one of the 2 chicks hatched. It may not be the result the Greggs wanted, but it's a start, and the loon watching community becomes helicopter parents.
My wife particularly gets quite upset when she sees the hawks and the eagles soaring overhead looking for something to feed on, and she's gotten out in the kayak to try and scare them away or warn boaters just to be aware that the loons are here.
And people on the lake, it gives them a lot of pleasure to see these little loons, and seeing the adults teaching them different things, how to dive and how to fish and how to swallow larger fish, and everybody looks out after them. Yeah, it's an exciting time.
Parents feed their chicks small fish, and for the first month of their lives, They double their weight every week.
The larger the little guy gets, the better off he's going to be. So they're working hard to keep him fed and keep him growing. We're keeping our fingers crossed that it's going to survive.
At the end of summer, the parents leave the lake, and chicks, now big enough to fish and fend off predators, learn to fly solo. Chicks, now juveniles, leave the lake a few weeks after their parents. And with luck, in about 3 to 5 years, juveniles will return to freshwater lakes with partners to serenade and to raise families of their own. The fate of the common loon remains uncertain, but for loon watchers like the Greggs, hope remains that one day this iconic Canadian symbol will face a brighter future.
It gives us the sense of pride to see this going on, and like it's almost as exciting as when you have your own children. Very encouraging. 4 years in a row, we've had good luck with our loon platform, and hopefully many more years to come.